I thought I would talk about rest today because ironically I've just been sick and so I've had enforced rest. And that's something I've been learning about actually quite a lot. And it's something I've been working on internally and dealing with what rest actually means for me, and how that translates to how I live my life, basically. So when I was kind of putting this video together and I was thinking about rest and what it all means, and rest isn't laziness, and I thought, well, actually, when I think rest isn't laziness, the first thing that comes up for me when I have this gut reaction is, well, no, technically it's not, because when you need rest, you need to rest. But I also believe, and this is part of my pattern, is that I use my need for rest as a procrastination tool. So if there are things that I need to get done, I'll suddenly start to feel really tired, and then rest. So, and that can be often what happens when you have lots of things to do. If you know me, you know I'm a big fan of Louise Hay, and in her book, You Can Heal Your Life, when you look under fatigue, it's like you've got too much to do, basically. Or you're bored with what you're doing, but also sometimes fatigue along with small illnesses is you've just got a lot going on, and you feel these things. Well, I feel tired, and I've got a lot going on, it's difficult to deal with, I've got admin to do maybe, and then I'm tired. So rest can be a form of procrastination in that area. So it's something that I'm very mindful of, because I don't want to label rest as lazy, but also because it's not, because when you need rest, you need rest. But it's also being mindful of, is it a need for rest, or is there another need that I'm using rest to basically deal with? So I thought I'd take us back a little bit, and let's talk about because I've lots of guilt around rest and where that actually came from. So when I was a teenager, I'd grown up in a house pretty much all my life with a dad who was an alcoholic. He was quite abusive, he was quite violent towards my mum. And I watched my mum work really hard and end up being dependent on somebody financially and in other ways who actually wasn't the best person to be dependent on, because he would have all these issues going on, and he would bring drama, he would bring all this other stuff with it, and sometimes he'd be wonderful to her, sometimes he'd be very abusive, both emotionally and physically. And I think I was about 14 or 15 when I made a very conscious decision that I was never going to rely on anybody else for anything, especially a man. I have kind of stuck to that most of my life. It's been something that has played through my life, but that's kind of led to like the rest being an issue, because then I feel guilty, because I'm like, well, if I don't do it, who is there to do it? Because I've got to do it all, because I need to be in charge of everything. I need to be running the show, because if I'm not running the show, if I'm not responsible for everything happening in my life, then that means I've deferred responsibility to someone else. Cognitively, I know that's nonsense, but that doesn't mean that's not what's happening internally within me. And then if you add to that the pressure that I had at school, because I went to a very high pressured school where we were expected to achieve academically, but we also needed to be in sports teams. There was lots of work that, and we'd go home, we'd have homework, and there'd also be other things you need to get involved in school. And so it was like that work. And then when I left school, I went to university, but I had to, because I didn't have lots of money, I had to work through university. So I had to have a job, I had to work. And then rest was something that you had to fit in if you could. And so I think that that's something that has always been secondary concern of mine, when maybe it should have been higher up. So those of you that know, I recently suffered from really bad burnout. Now I've suffered burnout twice in my life, and both of which were the same. It was the same cause, really. So the first time was when I was in my mid-20s. I was working in banking, and that was high pressure. And we were expected to do a lot by our boss. And at one point he banned holidays because he needed us to work, and he didn't want to hire anybody else, even though we had more work than we could cope with, because he said if the market takes a downturn, he might have to fire somebody. And I'm like, so we just kind of like went along with it. It was a very small team. We worked very hard. But after 4 years of being in banking, my final year there, I was sick all the time. I think I was on antibiotics every other month, and in between doses of antibiotics, I was getting colds and flus, and I was just under constant exhaustion. And to the end, I just gave up. I just walked away. I was like, I can't do this anymore. My body just couldn't have taken anymore. I think I would have been, I don't know what would have happened to me if I'd stayed in that environment. Now, bearing in mind when I left, I was not sick for 5 years after leaving banking. So that was the difference between me under that kind of pressure when I'm burning out and living the life that I want to live. But then again, recently I've been running my business, and because I've had, and I'll be honest, it isn't just my business. If I just had my business to run, I could have run it in a sustainable way. But because I'm a single mum, my son has autism, and I have conflicts with ex-partners, well, I won't call him an ex-partner, but my son's father, and all of that stuff going on, with general life as well as having to run everything else, it reached too much, and I was getting sick all the time. Tired, sick, and it was that pattern that I had before, getting tired, getting sick, getting tired, getting sick. Until the same thing happened. It was just like crash and burn, I can't do it. And then I had kind of enforced rest. So that's one way of looking at it. But then recently, because I've moved house and I've been renovating my house, and that's taken a lot of energy, but I've been really enjoying doing it. But we moved in and we're settled, and then the inevitable thing happens when you've been through it, you've done a lot of work, and then you get time to rest, your body gets sick. Even though there's still stuff you need to do, because you've taken your foot off the pedal, I've got sick again. But I took a different approach this time because I've been working on me, my nervous system, and how I respond to things. I didn't try and power through the sickness. So I didn't think, oh, I'll just do this and then I'll rest, or I'll take a few painkillers and then I'll do X, Y, and Z. I allowed myself to rest. And for 3 days, I just basically sat on the sofa and watched TV. I sent my son to my mum for a day, for like 24 hours, because that gave me that break as well. And I just allowed myself to rest. And the result is I've come back much more quickly than I normally would from an illness. I'm full of energy and I'm full of inspiration and excitement and kind of like positivity about how I move forward. And I think it's that new relationship with rest, and something that I'm starting to work towards, that I need to understand. But also I think one of the things that I'm finding really important is to factor in rest into my day, into my life, into work. So because what happens is when I get to periods of under pressure, so I've got lots to do here and I've got lots to do here, and my son's giving me pressure for this and something else is giving me pressure for that, I then feel this overarching need for rest. But then at the same time, a feeling that I don't have the ability to rest because I've got all of this other stuff to do. So the work is to create that balance, which, being a Libran, I should be able to manage, but seems to be more of a challenge than you would expect. So getting that balance where I'm resting, but I'm also still doing stuff. So I have rest actually factored in all the way along, and specific rest breaks and ways in which I rest, and finding the best ways for me to rest. So sometimes, and it depends what's happening for me, sometimes I find that the best form of rest is to do something like a really restorative yoga on the mat, because that's going to get my body, it just allows my body to recharge at rest, because that's when I'm physically tired. But sometimes when I get mentally tired as well, that actually the best thing for me to do is to shut down, to go within and to be quiet and away from people and away from doing anything. So that may mean watching a TV program that takes me out of this mind processes happening and allows my mind to rest. So it's about understanding what rest I need when, and what rejuvenates me, so what's going to allow me to come back and be stronger. And when I do that, it's about allowing my rest to be sacred, a sacred part of my life. Now, one of the things that I have not always done, but I've been doing for a very long time, is meditating every day. So apart from, say, the first 2 months when my son was born, because I was kind of all over the place, I've meditated every day for, actually, I don't know, it's about 10 years, maybe longer. Actually, maybe 12 years. It's somewhere around that kind of level of 10 to 12 years. And it's something that stuck with me, that's consistent. And there are some of the other practices that I've had that have been really consistent for a long time. So I don't do as much yoga as I used to now since I had my son. Before I had my son, I would do yoga almost every day. And that was very much part of my routine. I would just do it and I wouldn't think about it. And so this is about factoring in rest as part of my day so that I actually get it and not leaving it till. And this is one of the things that often I do is I leave it to the end of the day after my son has gone to bed. So I work all the way through the day, wait for him to go to bed. And then the rest is a result of a complete collapse because I'm now really tired and I now need longer to rest before I go to bed than I would otherwise. And so I don't get as much sleep. And so the next day I'm more tired, and then it compounds and it compounds and it compounds. And so it's understanding how I get that rest into my day. And so these are things like, if you're listening to this, you're thinking, well, okay, what's this got to do with me? So thinking like, how do you relate to rest? Like, what does that actually mean to you? So that you can start to connect with that a little bit and see what's happening for you. So then it's like thinking, okay, and this is some of the stuff that I like to focus in on when I'm thinking about rest, is who am I when I'm well rested and who am I when I'm not well rested? So when I haven't had enough rest, I can be quite impatient. I can get frustrated with things. I make mistakes because my brain is too tired to really function. And I'm not really enjoying life very much. And when I rest well, then I enjoy life. I'm happier. I'm more enthusiastic. I've got more energy for things. I'm much more balanced in the way that I respond to things. So I'm gonna be less likely to be at the limit. Like my well will be less full. And I actually almost imagine myself quite often as a well full of water. And when I have a lot of stuff that I'm taking on, and I feel like I'm dripping over the top, and that's when I will react emotionally rather than responding to situations, because I literally don't have the capacity to take any more on at that moment. And so this is about me learning to have that rest. So it's like I'm scooping water out to give myself the space to take on more things. And it really does change who I am, how I feel, and how I deal with stuff. And I think that's really important. And then, there's the whole point of who I want to be. Who do I want to be? So that's what this is about. This is about who I am when I'm well rested. Who do I want to be? Do I want to be somebody who ignores what their body is telling them, ignores what's happening, the signals that are happening to them, and disconnects from their intuition? Because that's one of the things that happened during burnout, is because I'm burning out, because I'm pushing, I'm disconnecting from my intuition because I'm not listening to anything that's happening in my body. And so nothing is really flowing through me. When I'm well rested and I'm connected to my body, I'm listening to what's happening and I'm responding to the cues, my intuition is much stronger because I'm allowing myself to be open to that by connecting in that way. And then obviously when I'm becoming that person, I'm showing my son, I'm demonstrating to him how to live a balanced, fulfilled life, and that there is more than one way than, say, being a workaholic or being somebody who pushes through everything in order to achieve, that there is joy and pleasure and happiness through other means rather than just achievement, success, productivity. And to measure yourself on your productive output is not necessarily going to get you very far in life, because you'll get so far, but if it's at the expense of everything else in your life, it's always going to feel hollow and empty and like you don't really want to stick with it. And that's what I really want to leave him with, and leave you with really as well, so that when you feel you need to rest, if you're listening to your body, and this is why, and I said at the beginning, and I'll tie right back to the beginning when I said sometimes rest is procrastination. So when you're listening to your body and you're thinking, okay, am I making this decision to rest because I need to rest? And that's what my body is telling me, is what's happening inside, it's the signals I'm getting. Or is there another thing happening, like anxiety around doing something, that I am then procrastinating with and using rest as a form of procrastination? So it's listening to those cues inside and what's happening to your body. So that's what I'm going to be doing going forward. I'm going to be listening more to my body, listening to what's happening, spending time checking in with my body. And this is all part of my nervous system regulation as well, which I'll do a video about in the future, about how the work I'm doing on my nervous system and what's happening there. and the kind of stuff that I'm bringing up and what I'm experiencing. But for now, just know that I am listening to what my body is telling me, and I'm going to push hard on the days when I'm full of energy and I'm going to get loads of stuff done. And on the days when I'm feeling low of energy, I'm going to rest, recuperate and recover, but at the same time, ensuring that rest is factored in through the whole time so that I'm constantly rested and have less of the really low days and more of the productive days naturally.